Hello everyone, in today's video I will be narrating stories that I found off of Reddit. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But without further ado,
let's get straight into these stories.
I just turned 21. I've lived in this apartment complex with my mom since 2016. People come and go. Most of the tenants have been here for a long time, though longer than we've been here. We have a nice, safe community and it's a nice old town. Everyone kind of knows each other. This guy moved in. I'm not sure when exactly. It's certainly been less than a year. His mom has been living here for a while and he recently moved in with her. I just learned yesterday with a very forced uncomfortable encounter that he's 40. This isn't my first encounter with him either. He approached me in January of this year asking me if I was single and calling me beautiful. I told him I wasn't looking for anything and that was that. He wasn't harsh with me or anything. 2 days ago, I heard this awful male voice furiously yelling outside. The same man was outside yelling at the top of his lungs because he thought he heard someone call him a crackhead. This isn't the first time he's yelled outside for everyone to hear. He's gotten in verbal fights with some other dude tenant living here. Anyways, after storming the parking lot yelling, he eventually went inside and started yelling at residents from the top of his balcony. I went out to get coffee yesterday. I get home. I was looking down at my phone to turn my loud music off and I happened to look up. He's standing right outside of my car on my driver's side. I turn my car off and I open my door and he immediately starts crying. He started apologizing to me, saying that he's sorry if he hurt my feelings or offended me or my mom. I didn't get smart with him because I remembered how fast he snaps and gets angry. I was too nice, if anything. He then started telling me bits of his life story and how he's battling with depression and how he has a drug problem. He even goes on to tell me how he has a son. He then started telling me that he saw me leave and that he was looking through the blinds and saw me come back. He was saying how he felt like he had to come out and talk to me. He was watching me through the blinds. I feel absolutely awful. His apartment is right across the parking lot from ours, so he has a perfect view of us walking to our cars. I don't know what to do and I don't know where to turn. I want to move back in with my grandparents and my mom won't move back in until one of them passes. We lived there with them for a really long time and this apartment was the crown jewel of our freedom and independence. I understand why she doesn't want to go back, but I don't feel safe here. Last year, I had an experience with an obsessive ex showing up outside of my window in the night, so I have that on my radar and now there's this guy. I don't want to live like this. I am so stressed and insanely paranoid. We do have Ring cameras. My mom is getting another one for the front window, but I hate that we have to live like this. My dad is in a different state and he lives in a gated neighborhood, but I don't feel entirely safe in his house. My 10-year-old little brother is on the autism spectrum amongst other things and has random, violent outbursts and gets physical. I feel I can never turn my back on him. They lock all their doors in the house and it's like Fort Knox over there. You go to the bathroom, lock the door. You go in the privacy of your own room, lock the door. It's insanity. I'm in college right now. I do have a game planned, but in the meantime, I'm here. I can't make sense of this incident, but it creeped me out. Around this time of year back then, I would walk a bike path daily to this little man-made waterfall and back. It ventured through several parks but was overall in a pretty urban area. It was around 3 to 4 in the afternoon on this day. The bike path dipped several times under street overpasses, and it's always a little spooky and sketch feeling directly in the center of the dip since it's like a little tunnel created by the overhead pass. Anyway, I was walking down the dip and I hear a bike coming down the hill fast behind me. I step further to the right but don't really look back and was startled at the fact that the cyclist practically grazed me as it passed instead of giving me a wide berth. I was kind of flustered and annoyed. It all happened so fast. Then the woman stopped a little bit ahead of me and started to look back at me and I thought, oh, confrontation. But when she looked my direction, I realized the cyclist was actually just a really large child that I mistaken for an adult. It was still kind of dark where she stopped so I couldn't fully see her expression, but she stayed still with her head facing me for several seconds. I could tell by her silhouette that she was indeed staring back at me. She was just frozen and silent, propped up on the bike with her foot out, and it creeped me out. I wondered if maybe she was nonverbal and just expressing frustration about our near collision in the only way she knew how. Anyway, I stopped walking towards her because it felt a little eerie, and I just gently waved or something in acknowledgement. I don't think I said hi or anything. I don't really remember. Anyway, she suddenly turned and pedaled off in the same direction I was headed. She wasn't with an adult or anyone that I could see. I kind of stopped thinking about it as I walked because she just seemed like an annoyed kid. But as I got to the start of the trail, I noticed something under my car. The trail meets up with public parking, which happens to be at a public school lot. It briefly borders the parking lot so I could see something under my car as I approached. I realized it was a bike, and to this day I'm still 95% sure it was the girl's bike. It was under the back of my car, like someone tried to lay it down flat and shove it under there. I still feel extremely disturbed remembering it because I can't for the life of me think of an explanation behind any of this. At the time I was worried someone in the lot was watching me as I noticed the bike and removed it, but I didn't see anyone or have any problems as I left. I just leaned the bike against a tree and bailed. I didn't pay close attention to many details about the bike when I saw the girl because it was such a brief encounter, but I remember thinking it looked drab because it was white on gray, or something very plain. I guess I could be wrong about it being her bike and it could have been a coincidence. I was 17, it was my graduation year, so all my time was devoted in studying and preparing to my exams. After school, I went to additional evening classes on the other side of the city. School ended at 2:30 in the afternoon. Courses started about 4 and ended at around 7, so I returned home quite late. Usually, I went home with a friend from additional courses, but this time somehow I ended alone. I am a daydreamy type of person and I usually don't really pay attention to surroundings, so it was no shock when I bumped into a man while going on the sidewalk. I said I'm sorry and kept going, but something felt strange. I understood that the man didn't respond, so I turned around to see what's wrong. Well, I expected some kind of response like it's okay, so I turned around and saw that he stayed still there where I bumped into him. His body was half turned to me and he silently stared in my eyes. I felt shivers down my back. I remembered that he was young, maybe 20 years old, with blonde short hair, and he wore a yellow-brown striped pullover and red scarf. It was early autumn, maybe September, chilly, but not cold yet, so he stared me in the eyes, then smiled and slowly turned to me and started approaching. Silently, I was naive maybe, but not stupid to ask if everything is okay with him. Something was definitely not okay, so I turned away and quickly went away from him. But when I looked back, I saw that he was following me and kept staring right in my eyes, so I ran across the street just right when the red light turned on, hoping that this strange man will stay back. But he just kept following me on the other side of the road, and he kept staring at me silently all the time, so I ran. It was not some suburbs district, but that day strangely there were no people around, so nobody really to help. And also, what would I say? Help. Some creep keeps looking at me and walking on the opposite side of the street. I ran as fast as I could with my zero physical ability and a heavy bag full of textbooks on my back. Next traffic light was already near, so I understood that the creep would probably cross the road to my side soon. But Subway was near too. I don't think I have ever ran so fast in my life. When light went green, I didn't even turn back because I felt that gaze on me. I just ran to the subway and jumped in the first available train. He didn't follow me to the subway and I have never seen him again. Never told the police to, cause he didn't actually do anything. He didn't even talk to me. I've never heard his voice. This was still one of the most creepy and upsetting encounters I had. I, a 32-year-old woman, live in a pretty small town with one main grocery store. Last year, the store hired a new employee, a large, older man probably in his 50s. The guy would be stalking a certain part of the store and he'd always strike up a conversation with me and try to talk to my kids. I would consider him overly friendly, but I am an introvert, so I thought maybe it was just me. I was polite but short. I think most people would have gotten that I clearly didn't want to be bothered. Well, one day, a few months ago, he approached me and told me that it was his last day on the job and that I should come visit him at his new job, which was kind of weird in and of itself because I do not know this person. I was relieved it was his last day because I always dreaded running into him. He just gave me a bad feeling, like he'd asked me over and over if I needed help after I already said no. He would also say weird things like that we were his favorite part of the day. It just made me uncomfortable. The following day, after his last day of working there, I had to run back to the store for a couple of things I'd forgotten. I saw him as soon as I entered and quickly turned away hoping to avoid him. I thought it was weird because he had said the previous day was his last day. I quickly walked through the store trying to get what I needed as fast as possible. I saw him down every other aisle. He looked like he was looking for me, like he was craning his head. I was picking up the last thing I needed when he quickly, practically running, came up and offered me some chips he was eating. I declined. He started talking to me, asking questions about how I was, what I was up to, the brand of chips he was eating. He was just trying to make conversation with me. Then he started saying that he expected to see me at his new job again. I made some non-committal comment. It was about to to say have a nice day and walk away when he got very close, like inches from me, asked me how I was in a really weird way, and he was staring at my ring finger. I had taken off my wedding band when lifting weights that morning and forgot to put it back on. I said I'm good and started to push my cart forward when he freaky full on hugged me. I do not know this person. I completely froze. I wish I'd made a scene. I wish I'd shoved him. I wish I'd yelled. I don't know why I just stood there. Who freaking walks up and hugs a stranger? He stood back and looked at me to see how I'd react. He winked at me and said have a good day and walked off. I should have started screaming at him. I started literally shaking and bolted down the next aisle and started crying. It felt gross. It felt like he was seeing how far he could push it. I was scared he'd follow me home or that he'd be in the parking lot, but he wasn't. I started crying when I told my husband about it. My husband was really ticked off at the nerve of that creep. He asked around about him at work, and some people that had gone to school with him said that I should be careful. It's such a small town, I frequently worry I'll run into him again. So I had a 23-year-old woman and live on my own. I just moved out to the area for school and went to my local Walmart to gather supplies for cleaning. As I walked in, I took note of an older man near the entrance that I briefly made eye contact with and nodded at and just kept walking. Looked at folders for a bit and then made my way towards the electronics section at the back to look for a charger. I was making my way through the aisles on the way down looking at the fall decorations. Lots of them were geared towards kids, so I just glanced at them quickly and turned around to leave. The same man was there. I didn't hear him walk into the aisle and was holding / inspecting some paper plates with childish Halloween designs on them for kids. I thought that was a little strange but brushed it off thinking he had grandkids. I left and made my way to the electronics section where they kept chargers behind locked glass doors. I'm there for about 7 to 8 minutes and the same old man shows up. At this point I'm pretty far from where I last saw him, and I see in the reflection in the glass that he is checking out my butt as he walks by. I brush it off because I'm used to men making quick glances like that in public and left it at that. He is looking at the display behind me at the other side, goes to leave, and then this is where it's creepy. He stands right behind me and starts aggressively eyeing me up and down while licking his lips, paying particular attention to my backside and my legs. He's bastardly undressing me with his eyes. At this point he was giving off massive creep vibes and I started shaky with adrenaline. I was alone in the aisle with him and was afraid he would try to grab me. I stay calm despite my throat feeling like it had a ball in it and wait for him to leave. He does. Then I go to a random aisle nearby electronics, but in the general part of the store, I noticed there were 2 men behind the electronics counter and wanted to stay near them if something went wrong, and waited a few minutes just standing there to see if he showed up. I wanted to confirm if he was following me or not. Sure enough, 5 minutes later there he was. I caught him quite literally speed walking down the main walkway looking down each aisle as if frantically looking for me. He stopped dead, saw me notice him, and then promptly scurried off. Went to electronics section and informed them I was being followed and was not comfortable and asked if there was security. They don't have any, just theft prevention, and they offered to check me out there or accompany me to finish shopping. They were very kind and I took them up on the offer to get my cleaning supplies nearby. As we turned together, the same guy was standing further away staring. He literally just increased the radius he was using to follow me and was watching from the front by the registers now. I get my stuff, check out, and they weave through all of the clothing sections to leave from a different section than the one I originally entered in and saw him from. I didn't see him at all this whole time, got to my car, promptly drove to my new place, but stopped halfway at a random neighborhood. I pulled over and pretended that was my house to see if anyone tailed me, did not want this guy finding out where I lived, and then drove home when I didn't see anyone. I may be overreacting, but this is a new area to me and I've never had someone be quite that creepy and persistent in following me. I've done things on my own plenty of times and never had an issue. This all happened in the middle of the day at like 3 in the afternoon too. I was wearing loose clothing and just wanted to make a quick trip in and out. I have no idea what could have happened if I didn't notice or what his intentions might have been. I can't imagine they were good. Maybe he would have followed me to my new place. Who knows? Either way, the whole encounter was scary. He had no clue I saw his reflection and the nasty expression on his face. This happened a couple of years ago. I, a 26-year-old woman, was walking my dog in my local field. It was dark, but it wasn't late. It was winter time in the United Kingdom, so it was maybe 6 in the afternoon. The field is mainly used for rugby football, but is completely free to walk through whenever. It is also surrounded by houses and street lights on the roads, but the field itself is dark, so I had brought a torch with me, mainly so I didn't trot in any dog poop. I've come in one entrance of the field, and I'm following a path that leads to another exit/entrance. I use the field to make a loop back around onto the road and back to my house, giving my dog some off-lead time whilst in the field. Anyway, as I'm walking up the field, I notice a figure walk in the exit/entrance I was going to use to leave. I keep my eye on this figure as they have very dark clothing on and their hood up. I'm shining my torch as I'm walking, so I know the person knows I'm there as it's very obvious. At first I wasn't nervous, more so just being vigilant. My dog is a wonderful German Shepherd, so as you can imagine I feel pretty safe with her. It wasn't until I saw the person duck down behind a bush/tree. There is lots of new trees/bushes planted sporadically up the part of the field that isn't used for sports that I absolutely froze. I was about 200 feet from the exit but would have to walk past the bush they hid behind to get to it. I call my dog over and get her back on the lead so she is close. By this point she is also hyper alert due to the person behind the bush. With that, I hear a weird, high-pitched voice that sounded like they were saying my dog's name. I assume they heard me call her. They said it 3 to 4 times in this longed out high-pitched voice. It's clearly coming from the person hiding. Luckily, my dog wasn't reacting to it as it probably barely sounded like her name to her. I had a moment of shall I fight or flight. Either I, 1, run past the bush and try for the exit, or 2, turn around and run back into the dark field and make for the other exit, a lot further away, or 3, confront this person. My dog at this point hackles up, ears up, and is very alert in front of me, all while still maintaining a wonderful sense of calm. I went with number 3. I confronted that guy. I mustered up every bit of courage and confidence I had and shouted at the top of my voice, "What are you doing?" The hooded man came out from the bush very quickly without saying anything, and I said the same thing again. "What are you doing trying to scare a young woman?" I'm so glad my voice didn't shake/break when I said it, as I really was terrified at this point. He started to stutter and said, Oh, I thought you were someone I knew." I answered back and said, "Who hides from someone they think they know in a dark field." After that, he apologized a couple times and continued to skulk down the rest of the field, and I made for a swift exit with my dog. God knows what his intentions were. Maybe he thought I had a smaller dog and was going to try attack me. Maybe he saw my dog and realized, no chance. Or maybe he really did think I was someone he knew. Whatever it was weird and scary. For the last couple of years, I have been dealing with a creep who lives on my street. This street is a through road, and the creep lives about 1 block down on the other side of the street from me. It started with him trying to speak to me when I was walking my dogs. I walked around the corner of a building and he was there in front of me. He seemed kind of awkward, and I said hi in response to his greeting and kept walking. But then he was at the same place the following morning. When he was there on the 3rd day, I realized that he wasn't walking and we happened to see each other. He was waiting at that spot, so I decided to walk a bit earlier. That worked okay for about a week. Then he was there again. I adjusted my route to avoid that spot. Again, that lasted about a week. I turned into a side street around a high fence and there he was. I again changed the timing of my walk and he worked it out after about a week. I kept changing things up for the next few months and periodically would see him when walking. About that time, I hurt my foot. While I was recovering, my husband was walking the dogs instead of me. Then I happened to be in the local supermarket on the weekend and the creep is there. I keep seeing him as I'm walking around and he queued up behind me at the register and tries talking to me. I got out of the store really fast while he was being checked out and left. Now I should add that at this stage, the creep seemed to me to possibly have an intellectual disability, but I wasn't thinking creep back then. I felt sorry for him. He seemed lonely. I am now aware that my judgment is off as a result of childhood traumas, but back then just thought that I needed to avoid him. So I'm back walking and I continue to change the times that I walk in my route. Occasionally I would see him, but generally I managed to avoid him. My husband and I then moved out of our home for a few months because the roof needed replacing and asbestos was found which had to be removed. We lived with family during this time. I don't think the creep has a car because I rarely saw him during this period. When I did see him, it was outside the supermarket elsewhere in town or near my work. When we moved back home, several months went by that I didn't see him when I was walking. I thought that thankfully he had lost interest. Then, when I least expected it, he comes seemingly out of nowhere and he's right in front of me. I can't cross the street at that point and my only options are to keep walking and get past him or to turn around and go back the way I came. Turning around with a dog on a lead can be tricky, so I just keep going. I don't make eye contact and move as fast as I can without running. As I'm passing, he says, "Good morning, sexy. How are you, gorgeous?" Although I wasn't confident the police would take me seriously, I went to the police. I am very grateful to the young officer who spoke to me. He acknowledged that up until that morning when the creep called me sexy, it was a bit iffy whether they could have got a restraining order. But with that plus his past behaviors and my attempts to mitigate the situation, the police would apply for a court order to stop him. I only knew his first name and address, but they were able to work out his full name and it was on my copy of the application paperwork. It has taken a few months, but he didn't contest the application and the personal safety order has been made. He is not permitted to approach me or attempt to speak to me and he is not to walk on the footpath past my house. He could walk on the other side of the street. Unfortunately, he has continued to walk past my house, and I sometimes see him when I am out walking, which I am noting and reporting to the police every time he does. But he has not spoken to me since the order was made, so all in all, a pretty low level creep, right? Rug. I was sorting through old paperwork at work the other day as my office shreds and bins anything 7 years or older unless we need to keep it longer. I found a note that the creep had come into my work 7 years earlier, giving a different address and had spoken with me. Later, when I called him about his inquiry, he became inappropriate, that's what the note says, and was told the business would not be dealing with him anymore. Now I'm wondering if he moved to his current address because it was just down the street from my house. This happened about 6 years ago to me. I was a 20-year-old woman at the time and 2 other friends. I was 14 at the time of this story and we were seeing the new CO.AG. This was my second time seeing it, but I was super excited because my mom had decided that I could finally start getting dropped off when I hung out with friends instead of her accompanying us. After she dropped us off, we went inside, got our tickets and snacks at the concessions, then went to decide where we wanted to sit. This was before there was the assigned seating and you could just sit wherever you wanted. Of course, being teens and wanting to be on our own, we sat in the back so we would not interrupt the other movie watchers with our snickering and jokes. There weren't that many people there, maybe like 3 groups of kids and various other adults around them, but I did not pay much attention to them. We just wanted to be on our own. Soon after we were settled, the trailer started and that's when he walked in. I did not pay much attention to him though, but I still noted that he was the last person to enter the theater. I can still remember exactly how he looked to this day. He must have been in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. He was Caucasian, had dark eyes, reddish/brown hair, and short beard. He was wearing running shoes, jeans, a white baseball hat, and a jacket over a shirt. He did a quick scan of the theater and he stopped with his head in our direction and started making his way up the steps, all the while he remained fixated on us. We were 1 row from the very back and he sat directly in front of us, right in front of my friend who was sat in the middle. This was the first more noticeable red flag. Soon after that the movie started. I immediately tried to focus in on the movie, but not long after it started, the man started twisting his hat so at times it faced forwards, then backwards on his head. That would not have been a problem if it wasn't for the fact that every time he adjusted his hat he would completely turn his head to stare at us, then smirk for a few seconds, then turn back. It continued on like this for almost the entirety of the first half of the movie. He would then giggle to himself quietly even if the movie was in no way comedic. The vibes were just so off on this guy, bordering on sinister. By then I had completely lost interest in the movie and remained unfocused on what he was doing. Soon enough he changed creep tactics, and every time the movie characters told a joke or said something remotely funny he would full on belly laugh and turn around toward us while laughing and making direct eye contact with each of us. And after he got tired of that one he would stand straight up and rotate to face us, smile creepily, then sit back down. I was literally so tensed up that I had stopped eating my candy, and now my friends had started exchanging uneasy glances with me, and I could tell that they were just as uncomfortable as I remember clearly my friend on my left grabbing my arm as the movie was getting closer to the end and whispering my name nervously with widened eyes. I replied with, "I know, I have been watching him." I had decided to start coming up with a plan. I already knew that the employees here were unreliable, so I decided to trust the only other thing I could think of without my mom there. It was almost the end of the movie and I turned and grabbed both my friends' arms and whispered to them as quietly as I could, "Guys, the moment the credits start I want y'all to run to the bathroom and I am going to call my mom to come in here and get us." "Okay." They nodded, both looking as terrified and uneasy as I felt. About 5 minutes later the credits started, and the moment they did, we bolted as quietly as we could. Of course in my mind every horror movie scenario was playing in my head with me being the last to leave the row, so when I got to the bottom of the stairs I decided to do the dumbest thing I could have done. Go easy on me, I was young and stupid and scared. I stopped and turned around as my friends ran ahead of me to the bathrooms. The theater was empty now, except for him in our row crawling around and looking under the seats. This felt like it lasted for a couple of minutes but could not have been more than a couple of seconds. I was just petrified. I couldn't move at that moment, but believe me I started moving again when his head popped up from the end of the row, and after a jerk motion scan of the room his eyes focused on me. I swear his eyes were so wide I could see the whites from all the way down there. That's when he got up and started running, and so did I. I bolted out of there, skidding on the slick carpet, and shot my way to the women's bathroom, which was 4 theater entrances ahead of me. I could see my friend peeking out the side of the entrance as I got closer. I noticed that my other friend was not accompanying her. After I could speak again and was semi-breathing normally, we headed deeper into the stalls and I shakily asked her where our friend went. She told me that instead of running into the bathroom she shot shout off to the concessions where there are sometimes employees. This might have been my first option if I didn't know my theater well enough to know that it was a 50-50 chance for any employees to be there at that moment. We then calmed down a bit more, for we were now in the nosier and crowded bathrooms surrounded by other people and adults. After like 4 minutes, we decided to take a peek out of the entrance to see if he was there, and I kid you not, this dude was pacing back and forth in front of the entrance with the most angry look on his face, staring directly at me when I poked my head out. I still don't know why I didn't tell any of the women around us what was happening. We finally called my mom, close to tears, and told her what was happening. She immediately left the store she was at to come pick us up as she could hear we were very upset. After waiting a minute more, we decided to take another look outside, and thank God he was gone. We saw our friend standing near the front of the theater next to an employee. Turns out she had just been standing by the worker and watching the man run in my direction, then pace in front of the bathroom, then finally leave. She never said anything to the worker, which I thought was stupid then, and thinking back it's even stupider. But we were done. We waited for my mom to get there around the employee who never said anything to us and was probably confused. We finally saw her car pull up and raced out to it and told her to drive out of there quickly. After telling her what happened, she told us we were probably overreacting and he maybe thought we were cute and we were the ones who misunderstood the situation. Still kind of pissed at her for that. Very ignorant of a very knowledgeable and usually understanding woman, but maybe she was trying to comfort us. I don't know. All I know is that man did not have good intentions and we had every right to be as afraid as we were. Just thinking about it gives me the same goosebumps as I had in that theater. I know that if I saw him today I would know exactly who he is. Stay safe. Always trust your instincts. Even if you think you're overreacting, they're usually right. If you're liking this video, all I ask is that you make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video. Thank you. Many years ago, before cell phones, I, a 20-year-old woman, had driven over to visit my grandmother and was on my way home. She lived in a very nice part of town. I had only recently got my driver's license, and in my state, you are required to display P plates in your car windows. The P stands for probationary, but we used to say pick on me or pervert magnet plates. In other words, just displaying those plates on your car pretty much guaranteed you were going to be hassled on the road as a young person. And also, if you drove a small white sedan, you were likely to be female, all the more reason to be hassled on the road back then. So I turned out of my grandmother's street onto the highway. There was no traffic on the highway when I turned onto it, and I had driven no more than 300 meters when I heard this sudden loud honky right behind me, frightening the bleep out of me. I stuck my arm out the window and waved a circle signal, motioning to pass me, in case the driver thought I was going too slow, which I wasn't. The car then pulled out and began driving right next to me. All of a sudden, this creepy older looking man in an expensive plain white sedan honked again and was motioning at me to pull over to the side of the road and or wind my window down. I mouthed no at him. He got more insistent and looked angry as he continued driving right next to me, which is also illegal because he was blocking the entire highway. So creepy man let off a couple more short honks to make me look at him again and flashed this black wallet with some sort of raised metal, silver looking crest on it. He was now looking ragingly angry and was pointing at the shield wallet in his hand, like he thought it meant he was some sort of secret police and had some sort of authority to pull me over. As far as I was concerned, I had not done anything wrong. He was not police. My car was recently serviced, so I knew there was nothing wrong with it. There was no possible reason for this creepy looking guy to pull me over, and I was starting to feel more than a little frightened. I decided to brake suddenly so I could read his car's rear license plate in case he tried to run me off the road or something. In a split-second decision, I chucked an immediate left turn off the highway and drove fast down a few back streets and laneways. This was the area I had grown up in, walking around with my grandmother, so I knew exactly where I was going. I was so creeped out I did not check my rearview mirror for a couple of turns, so I had no idea if the guy tried to follow me or if he just took off down the highway. But either way, I lost him. Went to work on the Monday and told the story, and one of my older colleagues said to me that is a consular license plate, which means that the car belongs to a foreign embassy. Intriguing, but I didn't give it much thought, except in later years retelling the tale when I wanted to explain to people why I have a chip on my shoulder when it comes to middle-aged male drivers. I was at Walmart earlier this evening with my two daughters, one elementary school aged and the other middle school. We looked around the school supplies for a minute and then rounded the corner to see the Halloween candy on display. As we turned the corner, a slightly older guy came to really close to us like he was in a hurry and almost ran into our cart. He didn't have a cart or any items. I said, "Oh, excuse me," and then stopped in front of the candy to let my youngest ask a bunch of questions about the candy pumpkins. The man stopped quickly and started rummaging around the candies right next to my daughter. He was listening to our conversation and reacted strange when my daughter said she wanted to take a picture of the candy. He was twitchy and caught my eye and looked away quickly. We moved on to the women's pajama section to look around for a few minutes, and I noticed the same man pass by really close again. He was turning to the right toward the shoes with a big bag of candy cradled in his arms. My girls went across the aisle to the boys' clothing section while I finished deciding, and when I was catching up with him a couple minutes later, that guy was winding through the boys' clothes toward my daughter's. He paused and looked confused or lost, but still like he was in a rush, and watched me discuss sizes with my youngest. This is when I started thinking something was off with this dude. I mentioned him to my older daughter, and then we moved through the partition into the girls' clothes. I didn't see him again for a few minutes, and I figured it was nothing, but then he came into that section and was acting like he was trying to pick out a Justice shirt. He still had that big bag of candy that he kept adjusting his grip on. I kept seeing him take quick peeks at my girls, but then every time he saw me watching him, he pretended to be occupied in his shopping. I told my oldest that I thought he was following us, and she said she noticed the same thing, and I made my youngest get in the cart so I could keep them both close. They both like to wander a bit. The guy then walked out of the girls section, passing close behind me, but he looped around the partition back into the boys section and stopped at an opening on the other side, but still in a straight line of sight. He caught my eye again and twitched, then he pulled out his phone, texted someone, and walked away. By that time, I was on high alert and possibly getting quite paranoid. I looked around and saw two other slightly older men standing around. One was in electronics, kind of looking at a half-empty display of something, but I swear he glanced at me several times even though there were 3 or 4 racks of clothes in a hallway with occasional people in between. The third guy had wandered into the girls section and was apparently considering buying a Justice shirt too. Every time he saw me notice him watching us, he wandered down to the baby aisles, but he kept coming back after a couple minutes. I realized now looking back that if I suspected something bad, I should have gotten my girls out of there. Clothes shopping for a picky preteen isn't fun, and I wanted to get it done and over with. On top of that, I kept second guessing myself that the 2 other guys were just a coincidence. I kept my girls really close, and after we moved to the women's section, I didn't see any of them again, and I stopped feeling creepily that we were being watched. Now it's the middle of the night, and I'm pretty freaked out wondering what could have happened if I didn't notice the first guy and continued to let my girls wander around. Alright, but that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and comment something down below. But as always,
Have a nice day.